This episode of the Oh No 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 podcast is sponsored by Dynamic Industrial Services, the rope access specialists. Every week we talk about the Rovers' latest attempts to climb the SPFL ladder, but sometimes even a ladder won't reach. DIS are specialists in working at height, offering maintenance, inspection, repair and more, right across Scotland. So if you need a rope access specialist and you want a premiership service, visit dynamicindustrialservices.co.uk to find out more.
Hello and welcome back to Oh No No No, the only podcast dedicated to the SPFL's nail-biting specialists. It was match week 24 in the Scottish Championship and the Rovers continued their record of league games not being decided by more than a single goal, this time running out 2-1 winners over Ayr United at Somerset Park. My name is Duncan Cameron and joining me this afternoon to talk through this one we've got, first of all, I have someone who I'm sure is fully utilising his local bragging rights after the Rovers won twice down in Ayr for the first time since 2008. It's Graeme Meldrum. How are you, mate?
I'm great. I'm actually wanting Al Jolson to start singing I'm Sitting on Top of the World.
Fair play. We've also got Scott Fleming. How are you, mate?
Yeah, really good. Cheers. It was good to get the 3 points, as you say. That record's now gone. We've done that a few times this season, though. A couple of records banished.
That's it. We're really firmly putting paid to the history books and just writing new chapters. Something that it's nice to see, isn't it? Just not having to stick to these same old stories that we've been hearing for years and years. Also got Robbie Weir too. How are you, Robbie?
Yeah, good. Not proclaiming my happiness in the same way maybe Graeme is, but got my River Island ASOS combination on, so I don't know if the fashion police will shoot me after this, but we'll see how we go.
Fair play. We'll check the YouTube comments anyway. And making his return to the podcast after a good few weeks away, we've also got John Greer. How are you, John?
I'm very well. 1 week it's fashion, now he's bringing up hip and trendy folk like Al Jolson.
Nothing but cutting edge references here on the Oh No 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 podcast. Right, just before we jump into this game, I just want to kind of apologise, I suppose. So I've woken up full of the cold this morning, so apologies if that comes across and sort of affects your listening experience. Or if you're watching the YouTube and you have to keep watching me blow my nose. Also, thanks to an accident in the M80, I also didn't make it into the ground until about 3:25 yesterday, so I've got very little to offer on the part of the game where pretty much everything actually happened. But before we get to that, let's start where we normally do. And Scott, come to you first. Give me your thoughts on the starting lineup. So I think 3 changes, Lee Ashcroft, Scott Brown and Dylan Easton coming in from the side that started against Dundee United on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought it would have gone pretty much the same. Obviously, we didn't know about Ewan Murray leading up to the game, so it was a little bit of a surprise, but at the same time, when you've got somebody like Lee Ashcroft to come in, there's absolutely no worries with that, and it's a very experienced head to put in there and somebody that's played in a back four in that role plenty of times in this division. So no, I was happy enough with that, happy enough with the team. We also knew that obviously Sean Bunn was a doubt through what we heard on Thursday with the paper and stuff because of his knock that he took with that elbow. But no, I think I could kind of see that sort of lineup, but I just thought he might have gone with the same team from the Dundee United game. Going forward, I just hope that he keeps this back four because it seems to be, like, obviously it's easy to say we've won 2 games in a row, but we just look more comfortable just from the offset in games. But I'm just hoping that he keeps going forward with it. But no, I was happy to see Easton back in. The last couple of sub appearances, he's looked a lot more lively and kind of like himself again. So I think he deserved to come back in. And yeah, obviously we'll talk about the game in general with him. But and then yeah, I think, as I say, back four, I was happy enough.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out in terms of the back four. Leslie's been keeping his back four tracker up to date, and with Lee Ashcroft, obviously we'll come on and talk about him, but presumably, zero chance he's going to make it to Tuesday. That'll be 18 games on the bounce where we've had some sort of change in the back four. So half an entire league season without being able to name the same back four and possibly the goalkeeper. Which is remarkable as much as anything, particularly for a team that's sitting second in the division. Graeme, coming to you next. Any thoughts on the starting lineup that you want to give us, and then kind of take us into the game as well. And obviously the goal was pretty early on, so take us right up to the goal. Give us your thoughts on that as well, please.
Okay. Starting 11 wasn't too far away from what I thought it would be. We thought Ashcroft would come in. We thought Brown would come in for Vaughan, so there was no surprises there. What was interesting is walking to the game, seeing the updates that one of the Ayr centre backs was very quickly ill. I don't know how you get an illness between being named in the team at 2:00 and then by 2:30 you're ill. I don't quite get that. But the upside of that was they brought in Nick McAllister at right back, and I think if you look back to the two games at Somerset Park, all 4 goals have come down the side where you would assume a right back would be. So that was quite a boost. That was a boost before the game because I thought it was going to be a draw. Then heard that, thought we're going to win. Met my wonderfully smelling friend, Mr. Doolan, on the way into the ground. So then I thought it's definitely our day. And then had a blether with my favourite player's dad, which I thought, this is just, life imitating art. So yeah, that was bizarre even before we got in the ground. Getting to the game itself, I thought we looked very much in control at the start. Certainly on the front foot, certainly pushing forward. The break for the first goal from Mullen was excellent. It was a sloppy ball. He's got past somebody. He's actually tried to take him out in the run pretty early, just at the halfway line. He's kept going. Wonderful cross. And Rudden's peeled off his man and put in a great finish. Yeah, it's all to plan. Ayr United hadn't even, I think, got anywhere near our goal by that point, and there we were, 1-0, no broken sweat, happy days.
I take it, is it McAllister that Rudden runs off of at the back post there?
At the back, I think it's the boy Kilmarnock.
Sanders.
Because
I thought that was, when I watched it on the highlights, it's terrible defending. It's really poor defending. Yeah, it's really poor defending the whole way. Because first of all, they just turn the ball over in the middle, which is it's a slack pass. But then Mullen does really well, just no doubt in his mind. He straight away knows what he's doing. But there's 4 of them go chasing him, but not really with enough conviction to actually stop him. Like they managed to essentially dissuade him from running in on goal. But Josh Mullen was never going to run in on goal. He always wants to cross, and they leave that open.
It's a bit like the Airdrie goal in the Challenge Cup semi-final against us, where Todorov just gets free left completely at the back, and we've got 4 players going in towards the ball. Very similar to that. And
it was an Ayr fan on Pine Bovril who kind of clipped this out, so thank you to them for saving me having to do it. But as Mullen puts that cross in, or as he goes to kind of shape up for the cross, Rudden is the defender is essentially on the right side of Mullen, like he's of Rudden. He's where he should be, and then just doesn't move as Rudden drifts right across into that dangerous area, and then it's a really, really good finish. But yeah, very, very poor defending. I don't know how much a late change has maybe affected them there, but Robbie, give me your thoughts on the goal as well, please.
Yeah, it must be frustrating from an Ayr perspective when you've watched Josh Mullen do that time and time again last season during his sort of hot streak with them. So for him to step up at Somerset and to swing in a ball And I think you've got to give credit as well to Zach Rudden, because he peels away from the man, does really well to get it on target, keeps it nice and straightforward. It's very easy to overthink in that situation, and he's just stuck at home. So 2-2 for him, and again we'll come on to the assist as well later on. But just really great to see that start in the game, and over the last few games we've started really strongly, getting early goals from whether it's him or Jack Hamilton. So that's a real positive that we can take from games, that we're not just finishing them strongly, we're starting them strongly as well now, which is good.
Yeah, definitely. And John, I want to hear your thoughts on the goal, but also you can take us right up to the equaliser as well, because as far as the Rovers highlights go, that's pretty much Ayr's first attack. Was that really the case? Was it a bit of a kind of sucker punch, or was the opening 10 minutes fairly even?
I think as everybody said, the goal was a well-worked goal, and Rudden did very well. It really was their kind of first real kind of get down at us. So I think Ian Latto said it quite clearly in our chat, where he said it wasn't much a free kick they got. It seemed nothing of a challenge, and they seemed to get a free kick. They then swung the ball over. I felt Rudden got fouled at the back post, which Mr. McLean didn't appear to see. I think we were a wee bit unfortunate then, because you could see that you've got two central defenders that have never played with each other, because unfortunately they both go for the same ball, tried to clear it, both go up for the same header, and it just breaks the guy, and he does well to put it away, and then ran straight over to where we were, which I didn't appreciate, but that's another thing. It was a wee bit disappointing that we lost the goal so quickly, but it was understandable in the way that you had two central defenders making their first appearance with each other. So I wasn't too disappointed at that stage, because I felt we were always going to be better than them.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in Ian Murray's interview where Davey asked him about that goal, and he more or less said, like, I kind of wondered if that might happen. You know, when you look at the teams together, especially as defenders, they're all kind of big units. I mean, when you're playing Frankie Masson at left back, you know, you're going to win your fair share of headers. And then I think, yeah, again, you look at it, there's definitely elements where you're a little bit disappointed. I mean, effectively, all of the Rovers' back four has a shot at defending that. So I think it's James Brown is the first header that he doesn't win. Then it's Liam Dick's man, and again doesn't win that. And then, as you say, John, it's Ashcroft and Watson both go for the same one. But there's none of them where it's like kind of criminal defending. I didn't think. It's just a case of it's almost 50-50s, and we happen to have not won them. But Scott, give me your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, I agree with Phil. I thought it was very soft when I seen it, and I thought it was even softer when I watched the highlights again tonight. But again, it's just, I know it's two centre halves that haven't played together. I'll give them a little bit of leeway with that. I just think it's again another set piece that we've conceded from, and at one point we're going to crack this how we deal with it. But I'm hoping it's going to be this season at some point. But we've been doing it for the last season and a bit now, and I just don't know how or why we've not dealt with it by now. Because I mean, Ian Murray himself was a sort of no-nonsense midfielder / defender. I thought if anything, him and John Port would be able to sort this by now, but I don't know what it is. And I felt that Big Kev, for the time that the ball was knocked over from the back post to the other post, he had plenty, because it wasn't like it was a sort of looping header, and I thought he had time. He's 6'6", use your frame, but he's stuck. He's almost like he's stuck to his line every time. And you can hear him actually in the highlights, like shouting commands and everything. You're going, nah, just use your size, and just whether you slap it or punch it clear, just I think he's not giving his defence any chance to try and breathe at any time for a set piece. They're probably worried that, right, he's not coming for this, so I've got to deal with it. And then the two of them, the communication isn't there, and they've ran into each other. And obviously the boys just, luckily it's bounced to him and he slotted it away. But I do feel that I would like to see a little bit more of Kev coming off his line and using his size. Because I don't think there'll be many, maybe an Anton Dowds, but there won't be many forwards or players that are going to be interested in getting involved with him at 6'6" coming out for a ball. If folk will just run away for it. So I just think that he needs to be a bit more off his line at times. But yeah, that's just my opinion. But I do think that at some point we need to stop conceding for these set pieces.
I would say that you're right in that, but in that instance yesterday, I think there was too many people between him and where the ball was. I can't see how he could have gotten through his own defenders and strikers to get to the ball. That would be my thing there.
I would agree with that, John. I would say it's sort of like you're looking probably third phase of play really, where it's sort of like goes in, comes back out, bobbles about a bit, and then by the time it lands at the lad's feet, you're kind of like, well, it's happened twice. They're going to get the shot away, unfortunately, and it's always going to be difficult in those sorts of situations to defend. But I mean, I can get where Scott's coming from because, over the course, you look at it and it's been as you say, it's been last season I remember the end of last season talking on K107 and all the chat was about how many sort of goals we conceded from set pieces. So it is a recurring thing, but again, we've got the personnel to deal with it now. That's the thing. It was good in Ian Murray's interview that he clarified about Ian Murray, because I know that I'd said on the pre-match there had been a bit of speculation online that Ian Murray's shoulder was gone and that he needed some surgery, and Murray's just basically came out in the presser after and said it's just been a strained neck, couldn't shift it before the game, but seems to be in the right direction, so hopefully he'll be back to offer us a bit against Morton, because Lord knows that we need it against Graeme Morton, but we'll come on to them in a wee bit.
Yeah, I agree with you, Robbie. I think with that one, it's the first ball's definitely it's too deep. It's far too deep. The one that James Brown loses out for. The second one, I think you'd have to be very, very brave to go kind of flying out of that one. And I don't know if anybody saw Partick Thistle on Friday night. Their goalkeeper was coming for everything, and it was wild. You could see his defence were very kind of shaken up by it. But then the third one, the one that both Ashcroft and Watson go for, that's the one I think potentially Kev could actually go and try and punch that. But at that point, I wonder if he's actually seeing the fact that both centre-halves are already going for it and he's kind of taking that step back. So I mean, like, there's very few goals that are completely unpreventable. And if you pick that through, you can find kind of points to improve on. But in terms of so I mean, that was only 10, 11 minutes in. So the sort of 15 minutes after that, which is the only thing that happened 15 minutes after that was I came in and I can actually start sort of giving you some observations after that point. But Graeme, after that point, how did the Rovers respond to being sort of pegged back?
I think for that, until probably 5 minutes before half time, that was the only thing that Ayr had that was worrying us.
John, we'll come to you just to answer the same question effectively. So that kind of period after the goal, I think there was one kind of incident in that time actually, which was the booking. The boy Mackenzie kind of clatters into James Brown. I've seen a couple of different opinions on this, and I mean I've seen it on the highlights. What was your take on that period and that booking?
Well, I think the game kind of settled down, and it was. I think it was quite even Stevens then. Unfortunately, I was standing on that terracing, but at the side, so I just saw the ball going up the wing. Brown obviously was there, and the next thing he was wiped out. So I didn't have a clear view of it, but when you see it on the highlights, it's quite rash, isn't it? And it's quite the challenge seems quite high up as well on the on Brown's. I don't know whether he saw it coming and was able to kind of ride it out sort of thing, but it did merit a booking. So McLean got that one right, so that was fine. But yeah, up until then, the only exciting thing was you arriving with your dad and saying, "Oh, it was a hellish time getting here." Yep.
Excellent. Yeah, it was nice to see you. The very first face we saw as we came in.
No, that wouldn't be nice. Okay.
I think the next sort of notable incident after that, again, kind of decent, couple of few, kind of half chances for the Rovers, and then Dylan Easton goes through and hits the bar. And I mean, at that point, Graeme, did you feel like the Rovers were kind of in the ascendancy, sort of approaching half time?
I thought we were for the full first half. As I say, I think the Ayr goal was probably the first chance, the first and relatively only chance they had for the first 40 minutes. Easton's shot was outstanding. Just his ability to bring that, take his man on, size him up, have a wee look, and hit it from the angle he was at, was from behind the goals at the other end. It looked outstanding, piece of skill. And we seemed to have control of the middle of the park. We seemed to be playing well. It just seemed like a matter of time before we would get the lead again. And so
there was also the Sam Stanton one where he seemed well out, and quite close to the goal line, and somehow he shot, and the 14-year-old goalkeeper did quite well to palm it away. But that was Sam Stanton getting on the end of something, and then you had your Dylan Easton cracking the bar.
Yeah, he looks like he's kind of running into no man's land, Stanton. It looks like he's too wide and he's not got an angle. And I mean, whether that's a cross or a shot,
I didn't actually think it was a shot. I thought he'd meant to cross it.
I didn't think it was.
Ended up being a shot.
I'm sure he would tell you it was a shot, and I mean the technique's spot on either way, but I think he was looking for somebody in the middle with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, as is often the case when everything seemed to be going quite well, and we were all enjoying ourselves, we were it was thrown back in our faces as fairly innocuous kind of incident. A ball goes through. Lee Ashcroft's a half yard ahead of Anton Dowds as he goes in to try and clear it. And a little bit of a coming together. I thought at the time that it was just purely the contact, although looking at it from the other angle on the video, it does look like kind of Lee Ashcroft. It's kind of in the way that he falls. He's holding his hamstring. Robbie, is that the most Wraith Rovers thing you've ever seen?
Completely and undoubtedly it is. You sign a centre back, you get a big battle to get him. He looks like he's going to be an absolute unit, performs well from the start of the game, and then next thing you know, he's off injured, pulling a hamstring injury. As you say, it looked very innocuous, much like Stanton's one in the last game against Ayr. There was sort of like, it was similar areas, the lad, but I don't think there's anything to suggest that it was anything other than just unfortunate. And this is really where coming in and adding the likes of Ashcroft and Brown makes a big difference, because fortunately we've had a chance to rest Ewan Murray. So ideally, if he can come back, Scott Brown deputised so well yesterday at centre back. It looked like we really reaped the benefits out of him playing there earlier in the season, and I know that it's been a little while since he has played there, so he's really stepped up to the mark and just grabbed the game by the scruff of the neck playing in that position. And to be honest, for all Ayer's possession in the second half, I never really felt like they were too much of a threat. I know, Graeme, you were saying at the time you were a bit like, I feel like we're losing a bit of control in the game, but they had a lot of the possession, but you didn't feel like they were going to do much with it. And I think that was down to the performances from Brown and Watson. So again, another new centre-half combination as far as I'm aware. I don't know if we've had that one yet, but we move forward, and they did really well. So fair play to them.
Yeah, I think it's notable that Scott Brown, again, dropping back into defence, but dropping at the other side this time. So actually, he's played, kind of the right-hand side of that central defence with Ewan Murray. As you say, went in the left-hand side alongside Keith Watson. And yeah, looks like a defender now, really, when he does it. He's still, he's not necessarily sort of excelling as a defender, if you know what I mean, but he doesn't look like a midfielder who's just getting by anymore. He is, he's actively a part of that defence when we're asking him to do it. But in terms of that decision, Scott, Ian Murray, there are probably a couple of different ways that he could have addressed that. So he chose to put Kyle Turner on and drop Scott Brown back. Is that the decision you would have made? And what are your thoughts on sort of what the alternatives could have been?
I'm not sure if it would have been the one I would have went for, purely down to the fact that I think we knew that Brown was likely to go back, so I probably would have just went with somebody the most similar to Brown, which on the bench yesterday was Ross Matthews. If Sean Byrne had been on the bench, it would have been him. But I think the fact that that it was Brown that was going to drop back, or you're saying about alternatives, you could have actually just went for an actual centre half and stuck Dylan Cord on. Your problem with that is he's not played a lot of football since the Queen's Park game that he played the full 90 in. So it's the sort of thing, do you want to play somebody that's not played for 6 weeks, or do you want to go with somebody that's kind of been playing minutes between then and now? So he clearly went with Turner. I don't know if it was just to try and keep as much creativity on the park as possible, to try and really break through the lines of the Ayr midfield, because we've seen a few times this season with Ayr that they're really compact and they try and force us to go out wide, and they're happy for us to go out wide because, especially in the 4-4 game, that they were so narrow and it was so hard to play through them, even when they went down to 10 men. So I think Scott Brown's actually kind of kept that, but no, I thought that it was possibly. It wasn't a bad decision. It's not the one that I would have went for in the end, and so I would have went with Matthews and then allowed Scott Brown to go back.
It's interesting because there's definitely pros and cons to all of these, and I think, as we've said a lot of times this season, the end result justifies that decision entirely, and in full, that's you won 2-1. So well done, Ian Murray. That is the correct decision objectively. But
I think just to come in there, I think it's interesting with Kyle Turner just how, because he did everything asked of him yesterday. I almost feel like he gets treated a bit like a winger in the way that wingers are seen and how they play the game. A winger's not really deemed as successful in a football match if they don't go on and drive, and you notice them beating their man every single time and getting assists and things like that. I feel like Kyle Turner almost suffers from that slightly. I felt he was fine yesterday in terms of his performance. Didn't put a bit wrong, but I think that people have got this. It's almost like this higher expectation with Turner, that they're expecting him to be this sort of Zidane-esque, like pulling the strings and heart, and he almost suffers from that a little bit. That he gets held to such high standards that it does make it quite tricky. But I still feel that there's a player there that we're going to see. I'm sticking by this, and I'm fully on board the Kyle Turner January loanee train of signings that came in. I'm completely behind the lot of the four of them, that they've just been good additions, and I think that Turner will step up to the plate. It's just a matter of when. So I'm quite intrigued, and I know that we had a bit of a chat in our sort of WhatsApp, and different people were sort of saying the more it goes by, the more it doesn't look like the greatest decision. But I still feel like if you'd offered it at the time, you're still 100% taking it. And there is a championship player, the team of the season player in there. It's just about when we get it. And even yesterday, I think that he did fine in keeping the game ticking over. So, aye.
Yeah, you could go back to the episode we recorded immediately after he signed, and we were delighted. We were absolutely cock a hoop, and the fact that in the 4 or 5 games he's played since then, he hasn't scored a hat trick or anything, doesn't change that. I mean, it would have been nice if he had done. And he's had a couple of games that I'm sure he would say would be kind of below the standards he would expect of himself. But yeah, he's not been terrible by any means at all. He's still a very, very good player. And I think the thing with, like, yesterday, for example, you've got Sam Stanton in there who's doing everything that he does. And you've got Lewis Vaughan, who we're obviously about to talk about in a second, who's doing everything that he does. So actually, you don't necessarily need Kyle Turner to be doing a lot of the kind of flashy stuff and the showy stuff. Just keeping the ball moving, using it well, not giving it away. That adds up to an awful lot. You know, to put it another way, if Kyle Turner hadn't had a good game yesterday, it would be abundantly obvious. Because we would have been losing the ball constantly and not able to get it back. Yeah, you're right. He didn't do anything that was ever going to grab any headlines. But equally, I mean, he played.
That's what we needed.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And
I think there was the only issue with bringing Turner on is you push Stanton back 5-10 yards.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was what would make me think it was a wrong substitution. I think we lost the impetus to Sam Stanton. Sam Stanton became the sitter, basically. And I would rather have had Ross Matthews as the sitter and Sam Stanton doing Sam Stanton stuff 10-15 yards further up the park.
I think that's
the only change I would have made.
So what I would say to that is, and you and Scott are obviously of the same opinion with it, I think the only thing is that with Ross Matthews, and God knows we all want Ross Matthews to be playing as much football as possible, but I think that's the main issue, that he's not had as much football. So he's gradually getting there in terms of the time on the pitch, which is great to see, because I don't want to see Ross Matthews go out on loan, for example. I want to see Ross Matthews in a Rafe Rovers shirt. But again, we've got such a big squad that you can afford to make these choices, in the sense of players like Ross Matthews maybe being on the bench until later on in the game and then coming into a match. And I think I'm just glad that, to be honest, that we've got Matthews there and that he is sort of stepping up to the plate, because I thought he was superb when he came on.
Did you notice when Murray made the substitution of Lewis Vaughan, he put 10 up and Kyle Turner thought it was him. He actually thought it was 18 that he put up. He actually started walking. Because Lewis Vaughan does what Lewis Vaughan does, right? Lewis Vaughan obviously knows he's coming off and goes as far away for the subs benches as he can, like most players do. It's like an old-fashioned Alec Totten tactic, yeah? Do things like that, run the clock down. So he runs away as far as he can, and Turner just turns around, looks, kind of shakes his head, points at himself, and then, because I don't know if that's a confidence thing, and that's probably what's made me think he didn't have as good a game as others think, that he actually thought he was coming off.
I think, it's maybe reading too much into it, but I think there's also the number 10 goes up, and Kyle Turner's like, that's what I do. But that's not what we've asked him to do, basically at any point since he's come in. And I think that's where, for a number of these different things that we've just talked about, Matthews as well, 3 games in 6 days, I think we're going to see a lot of the guys that we've been talking about, this guy might need to be patient, or is this guy going to get a chance to play in his preferred role? You're going to see a lot of that over the next couple of days, over the next 4 or 5 days now.
I'd like to come in on the Kyle Turner thing, because I thought yesterday was his most effective game. I thought he did what we wanted him to do in that situation. Come on, win balls, get the ball moving. But there was another aspect to his game that I quite liked, and that was occasionally he was having a wee nip in the referee's ear, in a nice way. He wasn't mumping and moaning, but it was a good thing, because it's maybe something that we didn't have enough of in our team at times. I always used to think Christoph Berra was a step up from an Ian Davidson. Ian Davidson would go and shout and have a go at referees, whereas Christoph Berra, when he came, he was very respectful to referees, but he did as much moaning as Davidson did, but he did it in a nice way. So I thought yesterday Turner did that, but he was very tidy in winning balls and moving it forward. So I've been critical of Turner's maybe not hitting the ground running, but I do know that he had a wee injury when he came in, So I have to say, I thought yesterday was his best performance in a Rovers shirt.
Do you think
Yeah.
he said to the ref about the goalie stealing yards? 'Cause
No.
I've never seen a goalkeeper, I was going to say punished, he wasn't punished, but being called up for stealing yards as much in a game before in my life.
I thought that was
Right.
bizarre at the end when the ball was maybe about an eighth of an inch outside the 6-yard box and he sent him back, take a goal. Like, he's about to knock this ball 90 yards. It really makes very little difference.
Quite right.
Might
Needs
have helped
to
us.
silly old firm pup. Needs to have a slap in the proper leagues and
He does.
learn these things.
That's
Thought it was,
Ayr speaking for you there, Graeme. They absolutely despise Stephen McLean, so nice to see
Yeah,
that's
excellent.
another
You
one
did a great
added
game.
to the
He was
loss
amazing.
column. Aye.
I thought it was an odd game from the referee. Like, he seemed very changeable in terms of what he was given and what he wasn't. So there was a couple of points where I think it was Nick McAllister was kind of put under pressure from kind of Rovers forward. There was two in about a space of about 5 minutes. First one was Rudden, and he let it go for a really long time. So it was like McAllister was over Rudden, Rudden was over McAllister, and it was only when Rudden basically went to ground and was still pulling his jersey that he gave the foul. 5 minutes later, Vaughan goes down at the same part of the pitch,
Oh, yeah.
goes beyond, I think it was McAllister, it could have been Sanders, goes beyond him, and there's the lightest of touches, and he gives it immediately. And there was a couple of others where he did very, very similar, where it was like minor
I'm not
contact.
sure if I'm thinking the same instant, but there was one in the second half that was down by the railway end, the stand side corner, where Vaughan went by and he went shoulder to shoulder with, I think it was with McGinty, and
It was
McGinty
McGinty,
just
aye.
went down like a sack of spuds. He's like double the size of Louis, and yet the referee's blown for the free kick, and even the how shall we say, the partisan commentary of Ayr United TV were saying, oh, I don't think he's got that one right, which takes some doing, it should be said.
And I mean, there was one on the edge of our box as well, where I think it was Logan Chalmers he very lightly brushed off Sam Stant, and the referee gave the free kick for it. And I was like,
Aye.
there's not a foul in there. But then on the total opposite side of the coin, you look at that incident where Ashcroft gets injured. There's no malice in it, but Anton Dowds very clearly is second to the ball. Ashcroft knocks it away and they clatter into each other. And he waves play on. And you think, but that would be the easiest thing. This is one thing I don't get about referees. It would be the easiest thing in the world just to give a foul there. Nobody's going to complain. There's two players who are hurt. You can just stop. And he waves play on. And you think, you can see both sets of players. Like, what are you doing? What, just, I don't know, very odd.
And yet,
For me-
it's still an upgrade compared to, because a lot of the time you're not getting referees at that level due to VAR. Those types of referees will be doing the top flight while they put the elite referees in the VAR.
Yeah.
You're still
I thought
preferring
actually
that to the alternative.
the main incidents he got right, but it was these little things was quite odd. Overruled his linesman at one point. John, you'll have got a good view of that. It was right down in front of you, where
Yeah.
it was like a 5-yard pass that Vaughan was playing to Easton, and the defender just gets his toes on it and knocks it out of play. And the linesman's looking right at it, flags it for us, and McLean just overrules him. I don't know. But I don't think he had a great bearing on the game. But let's get into the goal then, and this first touch from Lewis Vaughan. So I'm going to skip ahead very quickly, and you'll see why. So when the halftime whistle went, I thought, right, okay, we'll get a wee kind of chance to catch our breath, and I was suddenly accosted by John Greer with his finger in my face, having a dig at me because I said that I wouldn't have started Lewis Vaughan, and he was right there, like a bullet, to come and berate me for that. And to be fair, listen, you're spot on, John. That was quite rightly having that thrown back in my face. Of course, I never should have doubted Lewis Vaughan at all. Because there's good work in the build-up in this. A good couple of players who deserve a lot of credit. But the first touch from Louis Vaughan here is unreal.
But see, before we talk about that, can we put in a word for the ball from Zach Rudden?
Yeah,
Because the pass itself, to get there, like the ball goes out to the wing and automatically his head's up and he says, right, I can see Louis there. I know that he can take this down and then he'll be able to do the work to get this in the back of the net. Completely selfless, because he could run forward and go with the ball. He's just absolutely pinged in an inch perfect pass, and then from there we can,
That's it. I mean, it's even like they win the ball back, and sort of it's Easton who just takes a nice wee touch to give himself a little bit of space and releases Rudden first, and then, as you say, it's a brilliant pass. But you said it there. It's one of these passes that's brilliant because Rudden knows he can take the gamble of, if I put this into the right area, Vaughan is good enough to turn it into a good pass, which is not to take away. It is. It's a very, very good pass. But there are some strikers where you would need to give them that ball on the ground, if it is essentially, for them to be able to kind of take that into feet. But
how can we put it? The big baldy front man receiveth, the big baldy front man giveth also.
Yeah. I mean, because he basically takes it on, about halfway up his thigh into his own stride. The finish is brilliant as well, but
I enjoyed the pitch side cams as well, as Ian Lattos pointed out, where the guy's got, you've got this. He didn't have it. He didn't have it at all.
You don't got this. Right, Graeme, you first, please. Give me your thoughts on this goal.
Just, it was funny. It comes up. I've said about the right back being hopeless, but you hear it on Ian Murray's interview that we thought we could catch Ayr United out with a cross ball. Yeah, a quick switch, and that's what it looked like. I was at that point down the side, so you could see the play Easton played it to Rudden, and the ball Rudden played. I'm sure he's played that blind as well. I'm sure he's just played that blind. He was essentially going nowhere, and he's just known, if I had this in the right area, fantastic. First touch, dink over the goalie, way abuse to the steward as you go past, happy days.
Actually, I'll tell you how good a cross that is. In his post-match interview, Ian Murray attributes it to Josh Mullen. It's both goals, Mullen's putting a really good cross. That tells you how good a cross that is from Zach Rudden. Right, John, I've already heard your thoughts on the goal, but tell everybody else how what you thought about that one.
Well, first of all, I thought my movement to get to you at half-time was outstanding.
I'm expecting you to be on the bench on Tuesday.
For a man of my age, it was. And no, just as Robbie says, the whole move, Dylan Easton to Rudden. Rudden takes the man on and then whips the ball over, and it's just a perfect ball. But then Louis, the way he takes it with his thigh, moves on and then just lofts it over the goalie. Absolutely superb. So it's another one for the Lewis Vaughan showreel, which is getting bigger by the week, isn't it? But just a tremendous goal, build-up play, and a great finish. Great.
That's it. Scott, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, the guys have pretty much summed it up pretty well there. I think I was actually surprised that the boy, is it Silla, that was playing the middle of the park for Ayr? He played that ball and it just never looked on at all. Especially in the highlights, it again just confirmed that he's tried to pass a ball, I think, to Dempsey, but like Dempsey's got two guys around him, and then Easton's just went, all right, cheers, and then just, as you say, taking a couple of touches, then just gives it to Rudden, who's ran on and pinged a brilliant ball across. I mean, I think the boy Sanders is trying to claim that he can't see it because of the sun. Lewis Vaughan's also looking at that sun, so one of them's telling the truth. So I don't know, but to me, that I thought that just kind of summed up the first half that Jack Sanders had. I thought he looked like an absolute car horse, a defender. He looked awful, and I tell you something, that they'll be hating the fact that he's came for Kelly and he's having a shocker down there as well. Because the fact that they're loaning somebody for them as well will be killing them enough. Never mind that he's mince. So, I thought, and then the fact that he's taking it down on it, I thought he'd need it, but in the end he's taking it on his thigh, and then it just that deftly flick over the keeper, and then I was a wee bit disappointed. He didn't celebrate as much as I thought he should have done, because he's taken a lot of stick for Ayr fans, especially the season that they went up ahead of us as well. So I thought he might...
Too busy shoving stewards out the way.
Well, that as well. But I thought he might have tried to
the
enjoy
steward
that.
looks round. the steward looks round to be like, what's going on there? Like, thinking someone's jumped the wall. No, it was just a player that's bodying you out the way. Get out of the way. It's a way to enjoy himself.
So that was the 47th minute, which kind of perfect time to score. And then the second half.
47th minute for us.
Well, it was 47th minute for you. I'd been in about 10 minutes by that point. But the second half then sort of happened. Again, I was looking at the Wraith TV highlights, so they're almost exactly 10 minutes long. The second half begins at 7 minutes and 40 seconds, and the last 30 seconds are just the celebrations at full time. So there's kind of one sort of notable incident that I've pulled out of the second half. But if we want to talk about generally how the Rovers played, because I think it's the way the Rovers set up and the way the Rovers applied themselves is the reason that there was only really maybe two kind of chances in this for Ayr. So Sean McGinty does have a header that Kev Dabrowski touches onto the bar, and then there's kind of two very dangerous kind of in-swinging crosses in quick succession that Kev deals with very well. But beyond that, very little for Ayr to actually kind of cling on to in that game, or in that half, sorry. So, Graeme, is there anybody in particular, I can't imagine possibly who, that you would like to kind of pick out from that Rovers rearguard who maybe deserves a bit of credit from yesterday?
I don't know. I thought the second half was essentially Ayr have the ball. We know you're not coming down their left, our right, because Frankie Musonda's right-footed. Jamie Murphy doesn't go on the outside. So all they had was basically a diagonal ball trying to get to Chalmers. And I wake up in the middle of the night in cold sweats thinking about Liam Dick against Logan Chalmers, because it never normally ends well. But I
Pretty sure Liam Dick wakes up the same.
Probably.
I did enjoy that in his post-match interview, that he was like acknowledged it. He was like, it's not the easiest.
Right. But I thought even for the first minute, I thought him and Easton against Chalmers, they were really good. They were really compact. They handled them well. He had that wee spell just before half time. I think he got a shot away, and he cut inside once. But I think second half he had his number. Absolutely had his number. The fact that he also injured them. Oh, I couldn't say that, should I? Oh no, we can't say we're happy that a Wraith Rovers player injured an opponent, especially one that is actually from Dundee United. Can't say that. We'll have to edit that bit out. But the fact that forced him off. And then McGeady come on and again. I honestly think we just went, Ayr United, have the ball, see what you can do.
That was how it looked to me.
It's just a strategy.
The local reports I'm getting are, Wraith didn't do anything in the second half. Didn't have to, or a bit.
That's the one thing that obviously we've been talking about a lot, the fact that all these games are decided by a single goal, but the Rovers have got the confidence to do that now. To see out a lead. And listen, it's not always going to go for you. You will sometimes concede a goal out of nowhere. But, that Arbroath sub-goalie proved that. But it was a very deliberate strategy, as you say. It's like, right, can someone looking at this, there's only a couple of ways you might actually hurt us. So, come and have a go, see if you can. Mm-hmm. And, I thought Liam Dick was excellent. Again, he's got an interview with Wraith TV. It's well worth watching. He speaks very well about it. And as you say, he almost owns up to how difficult an opponent Logan Chalmers is. But yeah, got by him once in the entire game. Liam Dix said that was the sun was in his eyes, and he just kind of catches him wrong side. Other than that, barely got a sniff. And Dylan Easton deserves a lot of credit for that as well. Yeah, so we talked last week about how well Callum Smith did with his kind of defensive duties. Dylan Easton did the same thing yesterday, and again, Liam Dick says it in his interview, Dylan Easton probably not the most enjoyable afternoon that he'll have. That's not how he wants to spend his Saturdays, tracking an opponent, but he did it, and he did it brilliantly. And as you say, Graeme, that was really Ayr's one clear route to goal. And the Rovers really kind of shut that down, and so it's set pieces that they were almost relying on. John, was there any point in that second half that you thought the tide might turn a little bit? Were you kind of concerned at any stage?
Not really. And I think the other one that needs a bit of praise is Keith Watson's come back in the last 2 games and really shown us what he's all about. And really disappointing for him that he's missed such is it something like 19 games he's missed through injury. But he's shown us what a player he is, and what an asset he is to have at this time of the season. We've got big games coming up, and I think you said it earlier, everybody's going to have to play their part, but it's great having him back there at the moment. But I think the work rate of everybody was very good yesterday, but Lewis Vaughan, for me, stood out for his work rate as well. There's an incident where I think they're up on the right, and Lewis is the one that's back there winning the ball and bringing the ball away from the box. I thought he put in a hell of a shift yesterday, which was just what we needed. But I think the whole defence get credit, and Kevin with a couple of really good saves when it was needed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Robbie, give me your thoughts on the second half, and then you might as well actually just take us into the kind of man of the match conversation as well. Give us your pick and anyone else you want to kind of shine a light on.
Yeah, second half was one-way traffic, but we were in control of that traffic. Very bold strategy considering the 4-4 game at Starks Park, where they were playing on the counter and turning us over. I thought from the back, Big Kev was magnificent. He didn't really have as much to do, but when he did needed to step up, he did tremendous, especially given I said before the match that you want Kev to have a big game after that 4-4 game, where their fans were quite vocal in their criticism of him, almost in a sense, or dismissive about him, saying, "Oh, he's a terrible goalkeeper," but he'd been playing injured. So what some of the more prominent fans of Ayr United on Pie and Bovril were sort of saying, "Oh, that goalkeeper's awful, we could have scored as many as 5 or 6, but
sorry to interrupt, but I saw someone compare him to Denise Mehmet this week. I have never been so insulted on somebody else's behalf in my entire life.
But again, look, he was playing injured at that point, as I say, and he stepped up to the plate tremendously there. Across the back line, Liam Dick was fantastic, did his job really, really well against a player that's caused him problems, as you have spoken about. Scott Brown already mentioned about how he's done really well to go into that back line and adjust from playing in midfield to being a centre-back again. Keith Watson's come in and he's week by week getting more and more game time, getting up to match speed. And then you've got James Brown to round things off, and he put in a really assured shift on the right side. Again, we never saw anything really come down that flank, and that's probably, you've got to give him credit because that's down to him as well for putting in that performance. So again, it was one-way traffic, but we did our jobs. We had the goals, and there wasn't really anything to worry about, and we still were creating the odd moment up the other end, and you could sense the frustration as they got to full time. But when you've got players, I mean, they were really just Sean McGinty hoofing the ball up the pitch by the end. That was pretty much it. I don't think there was too much else to them. They're quite a one-dimensional side if you take out Chalmers, and yeah, there wasn't really much to threaten us, and I felt towards the end of the game that we were in control, and when the full-time whistle went, I wasn't really surprised. So a really good win on the road. If we're talking about man of the match, there's quite a good number of candidates, I would say. So I don't think anyone should be too disappointed if they're not getting a mention here. For me, I felt a goal and an assist. It's an easy one to go to, but Zach Rudham, I thought he had a really good game. He was everywhere, holding up the ball, bringing others into play, gets his goal, which he takes really well, gets an assist, which is even better. And overall, over the piece, looks just a really, really good signing that we've made. And I know that Rudden's the type of player where people will look at his goal return and maybe be a bit dismissive, but I think he's been a really, really good addition. I'm very happy that we've got him on board, and I can see him, as games like that go on, he's going to get so much more confident and kick on. So, yeah, I think that Ian Murray should be given a lot of credit for bringing him in, and he'll add so much to the team, as we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. The man of the match is a really interesting one for this. As you say, that a lot of people could be mentioned. I've got 6 names against sort of like discuss man of the match. 6 names, and there's like 3 guys who could quite justifiably be added to that. Scott, man of the match from you, please.
Yeah, I kind of echo what the guys were saying. I thought second half we just looked really assured, and it's actually really good to see that, because there's been a lot of times that we've just been very hectic in the second half, no matter if we're winning, drawing, or losing. And it's actually good that we've just got that sort of calm head and at the back with Keith Watson being back. I think that's actually helped with him being back, is the fact that he's probably been a bit of a calming influence, or like whoever he's playing next to, but also for having Brown and then also Liam Dick, because Liam Dick came in for a lot of criticism over the festive period, especially when we were losing a lot of goals. And I mean, he wasn't playing well, but we were also chopping and changing this back 4, back 3, whatever we were playing. So I think now having the likes of Watson there is definitely going to help these fullbacks out a lot. And he's played at the top level in Scotland, and he's played at a good level, so he'll know what he's meant to be doing and how he's meant to assure his guys. But so I had, it was either Keith Watson or Dylan Easton for me. I thought Dylan Easton put a brilliant amount of work in. We've already talked him up, and Liam Dick talked him up in his post-match interview. I just thought the work he went through, and it's the first time I think I've seen Dylan Easton pull up with cramp at the end of a game, and that just shows you, obviously, the effort that he put in. And it obviously, I think Murray's kind of telling him, look, we've got no subs, so you need to get on with it. It was only a couple of minutes to go, but it was, it just showed you the sort of work that he'd put in. So I don't think anybody was worse than a 7 out of 10, but I think I probably would have gone with either Keith Watson or Dylan Easton myself.
Just to your point on Watson, and to be fair, Scott Brown as well. We talked in the pre-match about Anton Dowds, who scored a hat-trick last week. We barely mentioned him today. And I think that speaks volumes for how effective Keith Watson and Scott Brown were. Graeme, can I get a man of the match from you, please?
I would probably be, I think I said after the game, Josh Mullen, Dylan Easton, or Liam Dick. And I think Mullen got us the start, and he was forever closing down, harrying, hassling. But Easton, and especially for it being a non-Dylan Easton performance, there was nothing. Well, apart from the shot that hit the bar, he did a lot of hard work, and he did a lot of what you'd say was Dylan Easton stuff, probably 20 yards further back than he should be doing it. But I think overall his performance was excellent. He didn't panic. The second goal, he didn't panic. He won that ball and he looked up and he wanted to play, and he played in rudden from there. Whereas someone of lesser ability might have gone, we're under a wee bit of pressure, it's nearly half time, I'm just going to hoof this up the park.
It's great to see him
really
looking
good.
more Dylan Easton-esque though, like in himself. He just looks like, again, maybe the confidence dipped after going through a few rocky games, but you can see him get back to his old self and just kicking on. And that's exactly what we need. He's such a huge player for us, so it's great to see.
Decision making was excellent.
Yeah, Dylan Easton was the one that at the final whistle that sprung to mind for me as the man of the match. I thought he was brilliant. I was going to mention Josh Mullen as well, because we said it last week where earlier in the season we were getting these running stats and you'd think, oh, Josh Mullen's come out on top again, but you're not necessarily seeing it.
Yeah.
But Friday night last week, you absolutely saw it again yesterday. He was everywhere. He was an outball. He creates the first. Ian Murray thinks he creates the second. I thought he was excellent. But I mean, absolutely, you could justify really just about anybody. But John, final pick from you, man of the match, please.
Well, I said it on the way coming home last night. I thought Lewis Vaughan was man of the match just for his work rate, his goal. Yeah, but the other guys weren't far behind him. I would echo everybody's words. Everybody had at least a 9 out of 10 for me yesterday.
You really couldn't. I know. It was I think it was in the inside match day for the Dundee United game. Scott Brown was kind of running back across the park after being interviewed with the BBC, and he had the man of the match. And I wondered after the game, because they didn't do it live on the telly. So I watched it back, and they didn't give it to him. And I wondered, have they given it to him, or have they actually said, right, Scott, going to just go and give that to somebody in the dressing room when you get back down there?
Maybe they'd earmarked a United player for it and then had to frantically change their mind
had to swap it
they
back.
scalped one in from 30 yards.
Yeah, that's a good point. But it's one of these ones where if you walked into the dressing room with the Man of the Match award at the end of that game yesterday, quite easily 9 or 10 Rovers heads could have gone up to think, am I getting this? And justifiably so. But that
it should see, just to come in, just a final point. It's so nice with the squad. I know that we've touched on it like so often across the podcast, but the fact that you can have Callum Smith and Aidan Connolly not even come off the bench, and we can keep them fresh for the Morton game if we need to use them, because there will be lads that will need to come in for this Morton game that's coming up that we're going to speak about. So it's just good that you've got that depth, because either a Callum Smith or Aidan Connolly can come on and be match winners and man of the match. So just the depth that we've got, just ridiculously good, and hopefully gives them a chance to stay fresh for that match in the midweek.
Yeah, Robbie, I'm going to stick with you actually going into the Morton game, because we have both in kind of relatively recent weeks sort of debased ourselves on this podcast by saying nice things about Airdrie. Are we also going to have to say a couple of nice things about Morton going into this one?
Is calling them consistent been nice?
It's nicer than I would like to be about Morton.
Well, look, the last time we played them, and they were out down on their luck. Imrie was maybe getting a bit questioned about how the team had been performing and what's happened, but since then they've really turned a corner, and 15 games unbeaten is a really, really good run. But at the same time, look, we know what to expect, and it's going to be a tough game. Nobody's going to go in a game against Morton and then come out the other end like a Jim Goodwin and going, "Oh my God, long throws! How could you do that to us?" Like, we've just got to. We know what's coming. Just got to deal with it. And they are a good outfit. Big Oakley, he's in really good form, albeit there is suggestions that him and potentially Robbie Muirhead might not make it. Whether how true that is,
really?
Is to be seen. But we just know it's going to be tough. They're hard working, physical, and just got to get on with it.
Because I'll take the bullet then. I'm going to say a couple of nice things about Morton, because we've taken great time previously to kind of to slag them off, because the sort of previous iteration, if you go to 16 plus games ago, they were just, a big kind of gang of brutes rocking up for 90 minutes to see what they could shake loose. And when you're not getting results, I think you get all the criticism that you deserve, because you're just turning up and being physical, no intention to play football. Everybody's going to criticise you. As soon as you turn that into positive results, I think, as far as I'm concerned, fair play. I think that suddenly then becomes legitimate, absolutely fine. I've got no issues with it. And it's exactly like that, as you say, Jim Goodwin being like, "Oh no, they've bodied us." Like, aye, of course they have. It's up to you to defend against that. It's different if Morton turn up, you beat them 3-0 and they've kicked lumps out of you. That's different to if they turn up, they beat you and they did it by kicking lumps out of you. Because as far as I'm concerned, the end justifies the means. And they've not been beaten in 15 games. I watched them against Motherwell in the Cup, and I thought they were pretty decent. I thought, in fact, I'll go beyond that. I thought they were really decent. I don't think they're world beaters by any means, but I do think that, again, against what I would like to be saying, I think Dougie Imrie deserves a fair bit of credit for what he's done. And I think this becomes a really, really interesting game.
I would also add the caveat that we are the team that is ostracised by the media of Scottish football after Jack Hamilton's outrageous tackle on Jack Walton last Friday.
It feels like that's going to be like a real "you ain't seen nothing yet" from Dougie Imrie's Morton. Like that's not a knife. This is a knife, and they could be kicking some size of lumps. But we will we'll see. As I say, if I tell you this, if George Oakley and Robbie Muirhead are both missing, I'll be delighted because they have. I mean, again, we talked about like Anton Dowds, and the Rovers dealt really, really well with Anton Dowds on Saturday. But trying to deal with what is effectively two Anton Dowdses at once is a very different kettle of fish. But turning back to the Rovers, I'm fed up talking about Morton. Few decisions to be made on this one. So Ian Murray post-match talking about Lee Ashcroft and saying that effectively, I mean, basically what he says is I've got no idea, but it's a hamstring injury. So you're essentially talking about best case scenario is 2 weeks. Realistic best case scenario is 4 weeks. It's not a fanciful scenario at all to say that the season's over, effectively. Like, it really is, you don't know, but it is a hamstring injury, so you have to wait and see.
I can't believe we've got a player that's injured and he doesn't need a moon boot. What's that all about?
He's not on brand. He's not been through his corporate Wraith Rovers induction yet. Yeah. So decisions to be made on that front. You've got the possibility of Sean Byrne coming back in. So he, again, according to Ian Murray, he's still doing sort of his concussion tests. This is not necessarily how everybody thinks, but for me, if you're still doing a concussion test on a Sunday, Tuesday's probably too soon. But we'll see. And then you've got your usual decisions to be made in terms of the kind of front line and the sort of embarrassment of riches we sometimes have in that area. So, Graeme, is there anyone in particular you want to see come in for this, or anyone you think Ian Murray might be particularly sort of keen to bring in?
I think, obviously, we'll do the Ian Murray for Lee Ashcroft. And that puts Scott Brown at the base of the midfield. And I think, even though we've said he was man of the match, I think Dylan Easton might sit this one out. And I think he'll go for Callum Smith there.
It's funny because I've got the same team that you've just said, except when I said I thought Josh Mullen was possibly the man of the match, he's the one that I've got dropping it. And I've got Aidan Connolly coming in on the other side. But again, it's that thing. It's almost a case of like he's run himself into the ground 2 games in the bounce. So you rest him for this one, you've got him for Friday. Very, very good news that Ewan Murray just seems to have had a crick in his neck as much as anything. So you'd hope that he's in a position to come back in. Robbie, what about you? Kind of selection wise, anybody in particular you're hoping to see?
I'm quite hopeful that we get Sean Byrne back. If he does come in, I think he would add a lot to the midfield, just in handling them, because he's got that sort of dirty side to the game that would allow for him just to run about and clean things up. I think it's a different task against Morton because Ian Wilson's been superb for them since he's came in on loan from Queen of the South. We don't know what their front line's going to look like and how that's going to shape up. And they've still got a fair amount of quality across their side. And admittedly, they do their job very, very well. It's hard to say. I think that the thing is that we've got the options there to be able to change things up. It's just hard to say whether we change things for the sake of changing things. So I'm sure Ian Murray will have in his head about what exactly he's going to do. But I wouldn't really hesitate or really look to guess on it. And I think that this is the real time when we'll see the benefits of having a larger squad with more experience. Just trust in Ian Murray.
Yeah, I will say on Sean Byrne, it was the game at Capello where Aidan Connolly scored his 2 headers. That was the point for me that where it went from Sean Byrne's pretty decent to Sean Byrne's quality. He absolutely ran the show that day.
Yeah.
Scott, give me your thoughts on this one, and specifically, do you see a place for Ross Matthews going into this one?
Yeah, I sort of scribbled out a line-up when we were discussing earlier, saying that we would talk about the Morton game. So I've swapped actually both wide guys out. I just think that they both did a lot of running, and that I would rather have 2 guys that are fully fresh that can go for 70 minutes and then better than you can bring on Josh Mullen and Dylan Easton with 20 minutes to go. Like that, you're almost laughing just thinking of that. And then Morton have got probably, I think, Cameron Blues or something to bring off the bench. It's like night and day what they can bring off compared to us. So I think that's the two main changes I think I would go for. I would love to see Ross Matthews come in. I just don't think he'll do it. Now, I actually think there might be a chance that he maybe plays Matthews on Friday night at Arbroath. It's that sort of game that just I think Ross Matthews loves, just the sort of nighttime game. He probably wants it to be hammering down just so he can slide into challenges and be right up for it. But I just think that he might actually start Matthews on Friday. So I would just stick with Brown and Stanton again, because I think we're all pretty much in agreement that it'll be Ewan Murray stepping in for the injured Ashcroft. So I think, and I would just keep going with Rudden. He's in form and he looks good beside Lewis Vaughan as well. So I wouldn't really change that too much. And if you just say to Rudden, look, give me 60 again and get Hamilton to come on for that last half hour and cause havoc. I could see an argument for Kyle Turner coming in, mainly because I don't see Turner being as effective away at Arbroath, purely down to the surface. I think Turner on our surface, the way that he loves to, we've seen it in his debut, he pings a pass on a grass surface in winter. I'm not sure how that's going to look at Arbroath. So if you're going to start Turner in any of these games, I think it's Tuesday night. And I think Morton are the sort of team that you probably actually need to try and play around and not play them at their own game. Even though they have played a bit better this season, I just think that we've got to try and play a bit more tactical than what they are, in terms of a bit more direct than us, basically.
Yeah, I agree with you on keeping Rudden, but actually just because we barely mentioned Jack Hamilton, I thought he was brilliant again when he came off the bench. Did exactly what we needed him to do, and I don't think there's enough of a case to justify bringing him back into the starting lineup for Rudden, given how well Rudden played. But that's such a good position to be in, to have Rudden and Hamilton both in the sort of the form that they're in. And John, just give me your thoughts on Greenock Morton and this game on Tuesday night, please.
Well, I think, as you guys have said, I think Ewan Murray will come back in if he's over his sore neck. But I'm going to be a bit more radical. I'm going to say we'll start with both Rudden and Hamilton up front. The reason being that they're a big physical outfit, and I think we'll look to have the physical presence of the two of them, not only when we're attacking, but also when we're defending. I think that's where there'll be a slight change there. So I'm going to go for that, and I think there is an argument, like Scott says, for Turner starting the game as well. I think that would be a couple of changes that I would make. So that would be my reasoning for these changes.
It's interesting, definitely. I hadn't really thought about it, but you're right. I mean, it's very much a case of you can sort of match up to Morton in that sense and sort of beat them at their own game. With a big two teams, both with sort of Bebop and Rocksteady up front, just knocking lumps at the opposition. Excellent. Also, worth noting on this one, the Rovers board have knocked prices down for this, which is commendable. I think we're probably all in agreement on that. So I think it's basically a tenner in. I think kids are a fiver. I don't know. Look it up. What am I telling you for? It's cheaper than it would be otherwise, is what I'm saying. Someone who does proper research would have had those figures to hand, but it's a tenner. So hopefully they get a nice kind of bump to the attendance and a nice atmosphere, and hopefully a couple of extra kind of travelling supporters there as well. And on the subject of not doing enough research before talking about the Rovers, Robbie, you wanted to body the Fife Free Press briefly during this episode.
Yeah, it's a point of frustration for me that we get such good courier sport coverage daily basis, basically, on that front. And yet it just feels, I've just noticed this recently, that so much of their stuff seems to be pulled just from Rafe TV interviews. So I put out a tweet, I don't know, about a week ago or so, just sort of saying, like, hope they're on commission, or something along those lines. And then the latest article's just done my head in. It was, the lads got
to be fair, this was a direct quote. They went and asked themselves. They got a chance for an interview.
Aye. So the coverage is basically the lead for the question that's gone in is asking Ian Murray about his thoughts on Philip Clement, is it? The Rangers manager, and doing such a good job there. I just don't understand. Like, this is the best that we're getting as Rovers in however long. We're a point off the top of the league. We sold out our last home game at Starks Park, which has not been done for 27 years. And yet we're struggling to get someone to go down to Starks Park for media, for the local press. Now, I don't know about like how it's set up in terms of, and I've got nothing personal against the person themselves, but I just want to raise the question about, like, why is the standard like so shockingly bad? Because everything else in the club's been pulled up. Whether it's the fan base, engagement with the fan base, whether it's the standards on the pitch, whether it's in terms of taking on feedback. So it really, really frustrates me that we're just getting such a half-hearted approach from the Fife Free Press. But again, raise the question, and yet their Flyers coverage, you get the editor going to the games and tweet blow-by-blow descriptions of the Flyers games. That's fair enough if you're a Flyers fan, but why is there such a big discrepancy? I don't understand it. So I just thought I would raise the question. Again, nothing personal against the guy. He's just doing his job. But at the same time, I think it's worth asking the question and sort of point it out.
It feels to me like that can only be a leadership issue. And whether that's like local editor level, whether that's corporate stuff coming down. But there's not, listen, there's not a sports
John's
report.
shaking his head. John will know.
The steam's coming off his head because he's mentioned another sport.
Well, sorry, just to quickly finish that point, the only thing I want to say is there's not a sports reporter in the country who's like, oh, what's my local beat? Raith Rovers, brilliant. I can't wait to get out of bed in the morning and go and ask the Rovers gaffer about Rangers. Right?
You shouldn't be leading that.
There's not a chance to a sports reporter who wants to be doing that. That's because he's been told something. I'm making massive assumptions here, but something like, you're not getting enough clicks. You need to get an old firm angle. More people will read it. But I would be very, very surprised if that is the responsibility or fault of the reporter himself.
Have a word. Like, think about it from our perspective. Like, the people that are going to read it. You're never going to get a Rangers fan saying, oh my God, that was a tremendous article. I'm going to share that from the Fife Free Press. Because Ian Murray, a player that was made however many appearances during the mid-2000s, really care what he's going to say about Rangers. Like, come on.
Yeah, the problem with the Fife Free Press is they've closed the local office. They've got no local staff now other than Alan Crowe. The guy that covers the Rovers lives in Motherwell or something like that. He takes all his copy now from the Wraith TV interviews, which I think we've all noticed. So it's all to do with that. But I'm in agreement. They should not be covering stories about some Belgian boy or whatever he is.
I just think as well, it's a bit... I mean, it speaks volumes about the work that Davey, Neil and the rest of Rafe TV do in terms of their coverage, that it gets pulled as like an easy source. But at the same time, come on. I think that the Courier have done such a good job in terms of engaging. And I'll fully admit I'm a Courier stan as it is. I think that the work that, again, Craig Cairns has done, I speak to Craig quite regularly. Alan Temple, I've spoken to Alan quite regularly, albeit it's very frustrating when Dundee United score a goal and then he goes full Brazilian commentator on you. And even Ian Collin, who's come in recently to take up the work, they just seem really engaged, really switched on. And then there's just this huge imbalance. It's almost just this sort of like apathy. Like, again, I can understand it if you're like, you maybe got a few teams to cover, but it'd be great to actually know why. And I'm sure they can probably see it from our perspective, but it just kind of feels like they're just going to ignore it and just go down the same old. So, aye.
To me, it reeks of corporate misprioritisation. I think If I don't even know his name. The guy who had the byline for that article, I would be very surprised if he's thinking, I'm delighted that I've been able to go and do this today. I suspect there's a lot he would rather be doing it. It feels to me like you speak to anybody who works in kind of print journalism in particular at the moment, and very few of them are delighted with how their gaffers are running things. And again, it's kind of corporate level. But that was worth saying, because didn't be sticking Rangers in your Rovers coverage. It's not. It's just not acceptable, is it really? Anyway, let's move into our final segment for today. So anybody who listened to the pre-match episode for Ayr United will have heard Graeme's diatribe, I think we can only call it, on the fashion choices of some people. So we're going to kind of take that tone, direct it away from maybe our fellow supporters and other people, and instead we're going to turn it on the kit designers of this fine nation, and in particular this fine football club, because while we have seen some excellent Rovers jerseys over the years, and to be fair, in particular quite recently, there have been there's been the odd kind of shocker in there as well. So what I want from my big question today is tell me about any. I mean, you can give me any from Scottish football if you like, but in particular any Rovers kits that you can think of that were particularly honking. And Graeme, as the resident fashion correspondent for this podcast, we'll come at you first.
Oh dear me! I remember one back in the days where John and I were younger boys. We never played in navy blue. We played in royal blue. And there were a particular royal blue one. I think it was Kingsway Bingo was the sponsor. I think if you look online, you'll see bizarrely a photograph of Bingo Simpson, our famous winger of the time, wearing such a strip. And it was a royal blue effort with kind of sky blue underneath it, and I had some sort of diagonal lines on it. Horrible, absolutely horrible. I had a horrible one of these sort of collars, round collar, and a wee sort of pin to hold the collar in place. Just absolutely honking. Makes me think about some terrible players that we had playing for us in that era, where we seemed to be a retirement home for ex-Premier League centre-halves. We seem to bring them in all the time. At ex-Premier League anythings, we seem to be bringing them in. I think at that time we were probably consistently mid-table in the first division, which doesn't sound too bad, but it's just a bit of a meh era for the Rovers, I think, and that strip was a bit kind of meh at the time as well.
I have a jersey from, I think, roughly that era. It's maybe the season before the one that you're describing there. I'll stick it on the hanger for the next episode. Scott, give me your.
I knew he was a way to get us shit.
I think that might be the one I've got as well, actually. Right, Scott, give me your pick for a kit you wouldn't want to see recreated by the fine people at Copa.
Yeah, I mean, I think for my generation anyway, I don't think we've had too many in terms of Rovers stinkers. I think we've had a few I wasn't a fan of, but I wouldn't have said that they were absolutely horrible. I mean, the one last season didn't like because we couldn't win in it. Every time we played in pink, we just didn't win. So I was just I refuse to like this top anyway. So it was as simple as that. And then we were Rafe Dortmund for a season with that yellow effort that we had a few years ago. Again, I wasn't a massive fan of it. I did actually get it, but I wasn't a huge fan of it. And then also I think we briefly discussed before we started recording the sort of salmon kit that we had, sort of Brian Graham era. Again, wasn't really a massive fan of it, and it wasn't something that we'd really had before either. So I'm all for us trying different sort of kits out, but it wasn't one that I thought it worked. And then in terms of Scottish football, I think one of the worst ones I came across was Partick Thistle had, I'm not sure if it was their away kit or their third kit or whatever, but when they were in the top flight, they had one back in 2015 roughly, and it was like some sort of army camouflage with pink, white, and black, and it was just horrible. I mean, I don't know who came up with it. It was just terrible, and I'm pretty sure I remember for social media that even the Thistle fans weren't a fan of it when it came out, and they were just like, "Why?" But no, that's the sort of one I would go away for the Rovers sort of thing.
I quite like that Thistle jersey. I quite like that, and I think that the sort of salmon, I think even salmon's kind, the sort of pinkish, kind of like, I don't know what you would call it, but that sort of weird pink kit that we had was, I think, like an attempt to do that kind of thing. Like, let's be a bit different, and there's not been that many pink kits, but the punch was kind of pulled, and it ended up just being quite drab. And then, I mean, I'm
sure it also actually had a meaning. Did it not have something to do with the Maggie's Centre that we did that? Yeah. So it actually had like a reason behind it.
I'll just stop slagging it off now. Then.
So that's why I also take it with a pinch of salt. It's like
that's a great segue for my one then, because my one's the Myeloma UK one, which was the red and white away kit, which had like Rudy Scatchell, Chris Johnson, just Jordan Thompson, Chris Johnston even, and who was it, Scott Roberts, just waddling about in that kit. Just been very underwhelming, so I don't know. Maybe we just need to stop being charitable and just because it's like the benchmark for a terrible season. But I think I own. We just need to go off and get sponsored by Nestle or something, and just some horrible organisation that's like, I don't know, causing issues across the world, and we'll be Champions League winners or something.
Yeah, I think I own all of these, which says a lot about my own personal kind of fashion taste.
The club, though.
And also, exactly how much of a mug punter I am. But the Myeloma one, really, it was someone like the day it was released said it, and I've never been looking in my head. It looks like a printer that's running out of ink. It's like the jersey's fine around about the shoulders, and by the time it just sort of fades away. But just to go back to that pink one, I've got no issues with the sentiment behind it. My biggest issue is the colour of the shorts and the socks, which were a sort of burgundy kind of clarity colour, which I was not a big fan of. But John, I've left you till last because I think you must own more Rovers jerseys than possibly anyone else outside of the head of warehousing at Joma. So. Give me your thoughts on your pick for worst of all time.
Well, the sort of wishy-washy grey one that we had, the one that Ross Callaghan got sent off in his debut at Ayr, I was never a fan of that one. I've got it, but it looks like somebody's put a white top in with a pair of blue socks or something, and it's kind of rad. I also remember, did Celtic not have a terrible second or third strip when they were sponsored by People's Ford or something, and it had brown in it? You know, the only other brown kit I remember, and Graeme will remember back in the day when Admiral had a Coventry had a brown and sky blue kit, which was horrendous.
See, speaking of that, actually, I remember the season Dumbarton when we had Christian Naddy and Mark Stewart up top. I remember they came to Starks on the opening day of the season, and due to an oversight with their kit supplier, I think they'd been given the wrong socks, and I think it was a white away kit, but their socks were skin-coloured socks. So it just looked really weird, like just absolutely bizarre. We tanked them 3-0. It was great. Ryan Conroy scored a free kick.
I know that you said you didn't like the Borussia Dortmund one, but I wore that in the Maracana when I was there on holiday, and I looked like a wee fattish Scottish minion walking about. Going 3-0 to anybody that would look. So
You know what my overwhelming memory of that kit is going up to Peterhead and watching Ian Davidson getting sent off for talking to the referee. Just talking to the referee. Not even a booking. He was straight red carded as we got defeated.
Yeah, that's
classic Davo.
They say that like vertical stripes are slimming. I think that kit proved like beyond any doubt that like big thick half blocks of horizontal stripes are absolutely the opposite of that. It was like, I mean, I know they did the kind of promo shots. It was like Davo and Benny up at the castle. They looked fine in it. Like they looked good. But anyone even slightly beyond that in terms of like body fat percentage, not a flattering top. And I'll say nothing about the players who were in the squad that season.
I sponsored Nat Weatherburn that season.
Oh,
his top was a tent.
I was going to say,
yeah. He may or may not have been the player that came in mind there. Right, listen, I'm gonna bring us to a close on that note because as the YouTube viewers will have noticed, we've been talking for so long. I'm now sitting in the dark.
It's Holly from Red Dwarf.
Yeah, it was bright daylight when we started. But once again, thank you for listening and for watching. By now, you will know how to find the Twitter, the Instagram, the Etsy, and all that other kind of stuff. As we said, remember it is no more than a tenner to get into Starks on Tuesday night. So if you were on the fence about going, hopefully that tips the balance, and we will see you there. And we will be back on Wednesday night this week so that we can review that game and then look ahead very quickly to our broth on Friday night. So thank you again, and goodbye.